Night settled heavily over the glass tower, muting the city into a grid of distant lights and muffled traffic. Lily Harper moved methodically across the executive floor, her cart whispering along the carpet as if it, too, understood the hour demanded restraint. At 24, she had learned that invisibility was a skill worth mastering. People rarely noticed a janitor, and when they did, it was usually to look through her. Lily preferred it that way. In the quiet, she could think. She wiped fingerprints from a conference table and paused to stretch her back. The building felt different after dark, less a monument to ambition and more a hollow shell holding secrets. Lily knew the layout by heart now. The boardroom with its city view, the private offices with doors that stayed shut, the corner suite reserved for the man whose name was etched on the building directory in brushed steel. Ethan Cross. So, age 29. A prodigy, according to the business magazines she sometimes glimpsed in break rooms. To Lily, he was just another door she cleaned around, another presence she never expected to meet. Ethan, meanwhile, sat alone in his office, the city spread beneath him like a challenge he was tired of answering. His suit jacket lay folded on the couch, his tie loosened, his phone face down on the desk. He had built a company faster than anyone thought sensible, faster than he himself could emotionally keep pace with. The accolades came easily, the connections did not. Tonight, the silence pressed in on him, making his thoughts louder than the hum of servers behind the walls. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk. Himself beside Victoria Hale, polished and smiling at a charity gala. They looked perfect together, which was the problem. Perfection had a way of smoothing over the places where honesty should have lived. Victoria was driven, brilliant, and busy. Their conversations had become efficient, transactional. Plans were made, dates scheduled, affection assumed. Ethan had begun to wonder when assumption had replaced feeling that a soft sound in the hallway drew his attention. He rose, restless, and crossed to the door, opening it a fraction to let in air. That was when Lily appeared at the end of the corridor, mop in hand, head down, headphones tucked around her neck, but silent. She startled when she noticed him, freezing as if she'd stepped into a painting unexpectedly made real. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, voice steady despite the surprise. "I didn't know anyone was still here." Ethan shook his head, already embarrassed by how abrupt he must have seemed. "It's fine. Take your time." Lily nodded, grateful for the dismissal, and resumed her work. Ethan watched for a moment longer than necessary, struck by how deliberate her movements were, how she treated the space with care rather than resentment. He closed the door, unsettled by the awareness that someone else occupied his world after hours. Later, Lily finished the corridor and moved toward the corner suite, following her checklist. The door was ajar now. She hesitated, then pushed it open gently, announcing herself out of habit. There was no response. Inside, the office lights were dimmed, the city reflecting off the windows like a second room layered over the first. She took 2 steps in and stopped. Ethan was not alone. The scene before her was not explicit, but it was intimate enough to feel intrusive. Ethan stood close to a woman Lily did not recognize, their voices low, their proximity charged with something Lily instinctively understood. This was not a meeting, not business. It was a private moment that had slipped its boundaries. Lily's breath caught. She stepped back immediately, heat flooding her face, shame blooming despite her innocence. She had not meant to see anything. She had not wanted to know. She backed out silently, heart racing, and pulled the door closed with painstaking care. Inside, Ethan stiffened. He hadn't heard footsteps, but he felt the shift in the air, the sense that something had changed. He turned toward the door just as it latched, realization dawning too late. Someone had been there. Someone had seen. The woman beside him frowned. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," Ethan said too quickly. Let's talk later." He watched her leave, unease replacing whatever warmth had drawn them together. The office felt exposed now, stripped of its illusion of privacy. He stared at the door, replaying the moment, wondering who had stood there and how much they had witnessed. Lily retreated to the supply closet and leaned against the wall, willing her pulse to slow. She had grown up learning to mind her own business, to survive by not becoming part of other people's complications. This felt like a violation of that unspoken rule. She considered quitting on the spot, imagined handing in her badge, and walking out into the night free of this knowledge. But rent was due, and responsibility had a weight that dreams did not. She finished her shift with mechanical precision, avoiding the executive suite, keeping her eyes on the floor. When she finally stepped outside, the night air felt sharp and cleansing. She told herself it was nothing, that powerful people had messy lives just like everyone else. She told herself she would forget. Ethan did not forget. He spent the remainder of the night restless, replaying the glimpse of a startled face in the doorway, the sense of being caught not in an act, but in a truth he had been avoiding. By morning, guilt had hardened into resolve. He would find out who had seen him, not to threaten, he told himself, but to control the damage. Control was something he understood. As Lily boarded the bus home, fatigue settling in her bones, she felt the echo of his office linger in her mind. She did not know why it unsettled her so deeply. Perhaps because it revealed that even the people at the top were lonely, or perhaps because she sensed that accidents had consequences. Neither of them realized yet that the brief intersection of their lives had already altered the path ahead. One glimpse, unintended and uninvited, had cracked open a door neither could close again. Morning stripped the building of its mystery. Fluorescent lights revealed scuffed baseboards and fingerprints Lily had missed, and the executive floor looked ordinary again, almost harmless. Lily arrived early, hoping routine would erase the memory of the night before. It didn't. Every polished surface reminded her of what she had seen and of how quickly she had fled. She was halfway through her checklist when her supervisor called her name. "Lily, the CEO wants to see you." The words landed heavily. Lily's first instinct was to refuse, to claim ignorance or sudden illness, but she nodded instead. Avoidance had never paid her bills. She smoothed her uniform, steadied her breathing, and followed the familiar corridor to the corner suite. Ethan Cross stood behind his desk, composed in a way that felt deliberate rather than natural. In daylight, he looked younger than Lily expected, the sharp lines of ambition softened by dark circles under his eyes. He gestured for her to sit, then seemed to reconsider and remained standing himself. "You were working late last night," he said. "Not a question." "Yes, sir," Lily replied. She kept her gaze level, refusing the comfort of the floor. Ethan studied her carefully, searching for accusation or curiosity. He found neither. "You enter my office." "I announced myself," Lily said quietly. "When I realized I shouldn't be there, I left." Her restraint unsettled him. He had prepared for defensiveness, even fear. Instead, there was a calm professionalism that mirrored his own in an uncomfortable way. "Did you see anything?" he asked, hating the need to know. "I saw enough to know it wasn't my business," Lily said. "I don't discuss what I clean around." The answer should have reassured him. Instead, it tightened something in his chest. Ethan nodded, fingers pressing into the wood of the desk. "This company values discretion," he said. "I expect it from everyone." "You'll have it," Lily replied. He dismissed her then, too quickly, as if the conversation itself risked exposure. Lily left without looking back, but her steps felt heavier than before. The meeting had been brief, yet its weight lingered, the imbalance of power impossible to ignore. That be why the end of the day, the consequences arrived quietly. Lily's schedule changed. Her supervisor handed her a revised rota with an apologetic shrug. Night shifts only, executive floors included, extra duties added without explanation. Lily understood the message even if no one voiced it. This was not a firing, not a threat. It was pressure, a reminder of where she stood. She swallowed her frustration and accepted the paper. Anger would not help her, and indignation did not pay rent. Ethan told himself the reassignment was practical. He needed to ensure professionalism, to avoid gossip, to maintain order. Yet each justification rang hollow. The truth was simpler and less flattering. He wanted proximity, control, and perhaps a chance to reassure himself that the secret would remain contained. The nights returned, quieter than before. Lily cleaned under brighter lights and closer scrutiny, aware of cameras she had never noticed. Ethan worked later than usual, inventing reasons to stay. They crossed paths often now, exchanging brief nods that carried more meaning than words. One evening, the copier jammed in the hallway outside Ethan's office. Lily knelt to fix it, fingers deft from experience. Ethan watched from his doorway before realizing he was staring. "Thank you," he said when she finished. "It's part of the job," Lily replied, standing. She hesitated, then added, "You don't have to stay late because of me." Ethan flinched at the accuracy. "I stay late because I choose to," he said, then softened his tone. "But I appreciate your work." The compliment was simple, yet it surprised them both. Lily nodded and moved on, unsettled by the warmth she hadn't expected. Ethan returned to his desk, unsettled by how easily the moment had pierced his defenses. AKT home. Victoria noticed the changes immediately. Missed calls. Dinners postponed. Ethan spoke of deadlines and meetings, but his explanations felt rehearsed. She watched him from across the table one night and saw distance where certainty used to be. "Are you happy?" she asked abruptly. Ethan froze, fork suspended midair. "Of course," he said after a beat. Victoria studied him, unconvinced. "You seem elsewhere." "I'm tired," he said, and the truth hid inside the lie. Meanwhile, Lily's resolve wavered. She told herself she was invisible again, that the building would swallow her just as it always had. Yet Ethan's presence intruded on her thoughts, not as the powerful figure she should resent, but as a man caught between choices. She hated herself for the empathy. Empathy blurred lines, and lines were all that kept her safe. One night, a storm cut the power briefly, plunging the executive floor into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting long shadows. Lily laughed softly at the absurdity, the sound escaping before she could stop it. Ethan emerged from his office, drawn by the unexpected human noise. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," Lily said. "Just surprised." They stood there, suspended in half-light, the building breathing around them. Ethan wanted to apologize for the reassignment, for the tension, for his own confusion, but words felt dangerous. "I won't stay here forever," Lily said suddenly, as if sensing his thoughts. "This is just a chapter." Ethan nodded, the statement landing harder than she intended. He realized then that whatever connection was forming did not depend on proximity or authority. It depended on honesty, something he had been avoiding in every other part of his life. The lights returned, breaking the moment. Lily returned to her cart. Ethan retreated to his office. The night resumed its quiet rhythm, but neither felt the same ease as before. They had crossed no visible boundary, yet something irrevocable had shifted. The punishment he had framed as necessity had bound them closer, and the closeness carried its own risk. As Lily finished her shift and Ethan stared at the city below, both sensed that restraint alone would not be enough to undo what had already begun. The first crack appeared in the silence Ethan had built around himself. It came not as scandal, but as fatigue. He missed a board meeting he had scheduled, arriving late with an apology that sounded thinner than usual. Mark Reynolds, his partner and oldest ally in the company, noticed immediately. "You're distracted," Mark said after the meeting, closing the conference room door behind them. "That's new." Ethan forced a smile. "I'm managing." Mark studied him. "You're avoiding something. Or someone." The remark struck too close. Ethan changed the subject, but the unease followed him back to his office, where the city looked sharper than before, less forgiving. Control, he realized, was slipping through his fingers not because of gossip or exposure, but because of honesty he had postponed too long. Victoria confronted him that evening. She waited until they were alone, the apartment quiet except for the hum of traffic outside. "I went by your office today," she said. "Your assistant said you'd been staying late almost every night." Ethan removed his jacket slowly. "Work has been demanding." "It's always demanding," Victoria replied. "That's not an answer." He met her gaze, seeing not accusation but disappointment. "I didn't plan for things to feel this distant," he said. "But they do." Victoria exhaled, as if bracing herself. "Is there someone else?" The question hovered between them, heavy with implication. Ethan could have denied it outright. He could have framed everything as stress and misunderstanding. Instead, he chose a narrower truth. I haven't been unfaithful, he said. Not in the way you mean. Victoria's expression tightened. That's not reassuring. He said nothing more. Silence finished the work his words had begun to tee the office. Lily sensed the shift before anyone explained it. The atmosphere had grown tense. Conversations clipped. People glanced at her longer than before, curiosity edging toward suspicion. She kept her head down, refusing to invite interpretation. The reassignments continued, the unspoken scrutiny constant point one night. Mark crossed her path near the elevators. He watched her for a moment, then offered a polite nod. You work late, he said. Yes, Lily replied. It suits me. Mark smiled faintly. Everything here suits someone, he said, and stepped into the elevator. The comment lingered with her. Lily had learned to recognize warning signs early. She understood that proximity bred stories, and stories rarely favored the powerless. The situation had become too fragile, too exposed. She needed to reclaim distance before it was taken from her. She waited until Ethan was alone in his office, then knocked. When he looked up, surprise flickered across his face, followed by something like relief. I'm resigning, Lily said before he could speak. Ethan stood abruptly. Why? Because this arrangement isn't fair to either of us, she replied. I won't be the reason rumors start, and I won't accept consequences for something I didn't choose. He searched for a response that would not sound like persuasion. You haven't done anything wrong. That's exactly the problem, Lily said. I don't want to. Her clarity left him exposed. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand. She handed him her badge, the plastic warm from her palm. Thank you for hearing me, she said, and turned to leave. After she was gone, the office felt emptier than before. Ethan realized that in trying to contain damage, he had created it. The reassignment, the watchfulness, the quiet pull between them. All of it had sharpened his awareness of a life misaligned with its promises that he left the office early that night. At home, Victoria was waiting, her expression resolved. I've postponed the engagement announcement, she said, until we decide what this is. Ethan swallowed. That's fair. Is this about a woman at your office? Victoria asked. Ethan did not answer immediately. He thought of Lily's dignity, of her refusal to be compromised. It's about the truth, he said finally, and I haven't been honest with myself. Victoria nodded once, as if she had expected nothing else. Then we should stop pretending, she said, before resentment does it for us. They agreed to step back, to dissolve what had become an obligation rather than a partnership. There were no raised voices, only the quiet grief of an ending that arrived too late to be avoided. News traveled quickly in controlled environments. The next morning, whispers moved through the company like drafts under closed doors. Ethan heard them and let them pass. His focus had narrowed to a single, unavoidable fact. The person who had acted with the most integrity in the situation was gone because of him. Days later, he saw Lily outside the building, waiting for a bus, her uniform replaced by a simple coat. He hesitated, then crossed the street. I owe you an apology, he said, stopping a careful distance away. Lily looked up, surprised but not startled. You don't owe me anything. Ido, Ethan replied. I used my position to ease my own guilt. That wasn't right. She considered him, weighing sincerity against consequence. I didn't leave because of you alone, she said. I left because I needed to choose myself. I respect that, Ethan said, and meant it. I just wanted you to know that I ended my engagement. Lily's expression did not change, but something in her eyes hardened into resolve. That doesn't change what happened, she said, and it doesn't obligate me to anything. I know, Ethan said quickly. I'm not asking. The bus arrived, its doors opening with a hiss. Lily stepped forward, then paused. If you want to make things right, she said, start by living honestly. That's all. She boarded without looking back. Ethan watched the bus pull away. Feeling the finality of distance, he could no longer manipulate or soften. For the first time, there was no advantage to be gained, no strategy to apply. There was only choice. As he returned to the office, The weight of that realization settled in. Whatever came next would demand more than intention. It would require action, accountability, and the courage to face consequences without hiding behind power. The story was no longer about what he had almost lost, but about what he might still earn if he proved worthy of it. Ethan acted before doubt could reclaim him. He requested a temporary leave from his role, framing it not as damage control, but as accountability. The board resisted at first, then relented, unsettled by the steadiness of his resolve. He stepped away without spectacle, understanding that credibility could not be preserved by silence alone. For the first time since founding the company, he allowed consequence to shape his choices. Distance stripped his days of urgency and exposed their emptiness. Without meetings to outrun reflection, Ethan confronted the patterns he had excused as necessity. He had confused discipline with avoidance, authority with safety. The realization was humbling and, in its way, clarifying. He thought often of Lily's composure, of how she had refused to barter her dignity for convenience. Lily, meanwhile, had taken a temporary job at a small medical office across town. The work was quieter, the pay modest, but the environment carried a gentler rhythm. She learned the names of patients and the habits of coworkers, rediscovering a sense of usefulness that did not depend on being unseen. Yet Ethan's absence did not erase his presence entirely. She found herself measuring her days against the calm certainty she had demanded from him. When Ethan reached out again, he did so carefully, through a handwritten note delivered to the office where Lily worked. There was no apology rehearsed into grand language, only a request for a conversation with no expectations attached. Lily read the note twice, then set it aside. Choice, she reminded herself, mattered most when it was unpressured. They met in a public cafe, neutral ground that belonged to neither of them. Ethan arrived early and waited, resisting the urge to rehearse. When Lily entered, he stood, then sat again, mindful of old imbalances. "I wanted to tell you what I've done," Ethan said once they were seated. "Not to impress you, just to be transparent." Lily listened as he spoke of the leave, the conversations, the discomfort of stepping down. She asked no questions, offering neither approval nor reproach. When he finished, she nodded. "That sounds like a beginning," she said, "not a resolution." "I agree," Ethan replied. "I don't expect trust. I know it's earned." They spoke then of ordinary things, the weather, the city, work that did not intrude into private spaces. The simplicity felt radical. When they parted, there was no promise made, only an understanding that honesty had replaced implication. Weeks passed. Ethan kept his distance, resisting the pull to interpret kindness as invitation. Lily observed from afar, noting the absence of rumors, the quiet steadiness of his actions. Integrity, she had learned, revealed itself over time. The turning point arrived not in a confession, but in a choice made visible. Ethan declined a public role at a conference, recommending another executive instead. The decision surprised the industry and unsettled his peers, but it aligned with the boundaries he had begun to honor. Lily read about it in a local article and felt something shift, not toward romance, but toward respect. They met again, this time by Lily's invitation. She spoke plainly. "If we continue speaking, it will be as equals," she said. "No power, no rescue, no secrecy." Ethan accepted without hesitation. "That's the only way I want it," he said. Their connection unfolded slowly, stripped of urgency. It was built from conversations that tested patience and revealed values rather than desire. When affection emerged, it did so without pretense, grounded in the knowledge of what they had nearly become and deliberately refused. The decision to marry came not as a dramatic gesture, but as a practical one, shaped by clarity rather than impulse. Rumors had begun again, persistent and unkind, threatening to recast Lily as a footnote in a story she did not author. Ethan proposed a legal commitment that would end speculation and bind him to public responsibility. Lily considered the offer carefully. "Marriage isn't a shield," she said. "It's a declaration." "I know," Ethan replied. "That's why I'm asking." They married quietly at a city office, Witnesses chosen for discretion rather than ceremony. There is no spectacle, no applause, only signatures and a shared breath afterward. The simplicity felt honest, an anchor rather than an escape. In the days that followed, the narrative shifted. Speculation lost its grip, replaced by fact. Ethan returned to his role with boundaries intact. His authority altered but intact. Lily kept her job, refusing to be absorbed into a life she had not chosen. Their marriage did not erase the past. It contextualized it. One evening, as they walked home together, Lily stopped and looked at him. "We don't owe anyone a story," she said. Ethan smiled, recognizing the truth in it. "Only ourselves." They continued down the street, the city indifferent and alive around them. What lay ahead was uncertain, unpolished, and earned. The ending they had chosen did not promise ease, only alignment. A life no longer built on glances and assumptions, but on decisions made in full view.